SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Pike County.
Here comes your morning show.
Dave in the morning
on 93.5 FM, SuperTalk Mississippi.
So now, understand, you're not going to dictate to me what I do and what I don't do, but I'm still the mayor, Mr. Brown.
Bloody angle, the symmetry. Your cheap adhesive isn't holding me. My mouth is a gun I can shoot. I can show you the truth. No pun intended, no punishment. If I offended you, you needed it. Ideas are the bombs in your mind. A fisher in time. If you don't have a weapon, you can't have mine.
None of this meeting is recorded. None by any party. Correct?
No, sir, mine is recorded. I'm being accused.
Any conversation.
Said I want to make it on record. I want the allegations in writing, or the accused, or on recording of this harassment.
I'm not afraid. I'm getting into breathing cells again. I'm down to absolute zero. I'm not the devil, but I won't be your hero.
And now, here's your host, Dave Hughes.
Good morning. Hold on, let me check out that. Okay, no missiles. So far, so good. You know, I almost wanted to start with the whole thing going on with Russia and Ukraine and the U.S. and North Korea and China and everybody, apparently. I wanted to start the show by saying this is a whole lot of familiar because if you were around during that time, you remember during the 80s where we had nuclear missile drills in school. But the more I got to thinking about it, I got to thinking and realized, you know, it's not really a return to form so much as an intensification of something that never went away. It's been more prominent sometimes than others, but this has been a problem nonstop, it seems like. It's just right now it's ramped up to a ridiculous amount. And I would like to make one comment, then we're going to get into some other stuff because we had a work session of the McComb City Board of Mayor and Selectmen last night with a lot of information on the financials. Spoiler alert, it ain't good. It's embarrassing at this point, but we'll get to that in a second. Here is one thing that I see people... Well, we have a tendency to gripe about things without thinking it through and without being consistent. We cannot say that Joe Biden is not capable of leading the country and isn't running the country, isn't in charge of things, and then turn around and when permission is given by the White House to Ukraine to use our long-range ballistic missiles against Russia, blame Joe Biden for it. He's not the one making those decisions, right? Or he is, in which case we can't criticize him for not being in charge. We can then criticize him for being stupid and making stupid mistakes and stupid decisions. Pick one. Both cannot be true. He's in charge or he's not. Either way, it's problematic. Not making any excuses here. I'm just determined we're going to get back to dealing with reality as it exists. Either Joe Biden is the problem or the mysterious behind-the-scenes people who have actually been making the decisions for a couple of years are the problem. I lean towards the second one. I really do. This didn't just kick in. President Biden has not been making the calls for a while. Not the important ones anyway. That's my theory. In which case... the old man, let's call it what it is, the old man in the White House, shuffling around in his slippers, wandering off into the Amazon jungle after his speech. I don't know if you saw that video. You need to see it. It's hysterical. Had a very clearly defined, very nice path behind him. No, he starts wandering off literally into the jungle. You just know somebody, the second they turned the cameras off, ran out and grabbed him around the shoulders, said, let's go this way. That's my feeling on that. Let's place blame in the right area. Does that mean Joe Biden's good? Of course not. Of course, he's got a 50-year track record of being awful. So no, that's not the point of this. The point is, you can't say that man ain't doing nothing. He's not in control of anything, and I cannot believe he would make such a stupid decision on the world stage. No. Either he's doing it or he's not. Let's be consistent as we talk about these things. Now, last night, at the 2.5-hour long work session, it was a couple of minutes short of being 2.5 hours, but not much. Dr. Carolyn Dupre, I love how we have swapped back to pronouncing it Dr. Dupree. Whatever. The good doctor. We'll just call her the good doctor. Was on hand to give the board an update regarding her work getting the financials straight for the city of McComb. There was a surprise guest, though, because we also had the auditor, and part of the problem here is going to be contained in the description of the auditor. Okay? If you think about it. Here on November 20th, 2024. We're 5-6 weeks away from 2025 when I say that last night at the work session, the auditor that is working on the 2020-2021 audit was also there last night and spoke to the board. One of the big problems is contained in that descriptor. I'm pretty sure you could figure out what it is. But we're going to go through as much of this audio as we can this morning. We're going to start with the opening remarks, if you will, from Dr. Dupre.
Just to give an update on the finances as far as where we are with getting your records prepared for audit. We're working on 21 and 22 simultaneously, really, but we are trying to close out 21. The financial statements for 22, the preliminary ones have been prepared, but of course it won't be final until we close out 21 to get those beginning balances and to put those adjustments into 22.
Now, just as a reminder, before we get too deeply into this, when you hear them talk about budget years, for example, when she says 21, as you know, the financial year, the budget year for the city of McComb, starts on October 1st and ends on September 30th of the following year. So it's a little confusing at times, admittedly so, but they refer to it by the year it ends. So when she says the 21 budget year, that is the budget year that ended September 30th, 2021, which means we are still dealing with things that happened in October of 2020. That's included in the 21 budget that they're working on, the reconciliation and the audit and everything else. That's over 4 years ago. I want to make sure that we're straight on that. You heard her talking about the 21 and the 22. That's the October 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2021 budget year, and the October 1st, 2021 to September 30th, 2022 budget year. That's the 2 years that she's talking about there.
But we're waiting on that to make sure that we close out 21. The auditor has given us a list of things that he needs in order to close out 21. So we are busy pulling those things that he needs. It's about 10 things that he needs. As you know, as an audit, He's not going to just take the numbers that we give him. He's going to have some source documents to back up the numbers. So we're having to pull those out of your system and work with your employees to get those numbers and get that source documentation to go with that. So that's what we are doing for 21. I think he asked for the debt schedule. I finally got the debt tied down to tie back to the financial statements. We're working on getting the capital assets tied back to the financial statements. And he also asked that I do the management discussion and analysis, which I usually don't do, but I will. I'm preparing to do that as well. So we're working on the things that he asked us to do. Again, auditors are always different. Some ask for certain things. They did the management discussion analysis themselves before, but this time he asked for it, so it's different things. So we're just now trying to close out 21, and we're pulling all the information that he asked us to pull.
My question is, when did he ask this? My secondary question is, this is for the budget year from October of 2020 to September of 2021. We are at the end of 2024, and we still don't even have everything straight enough to the point to where the auditor has what he needs to do the audit. We're still working on getting our paperwork straight and in good enough shape for the auditor to do their job. That's what we're being told here. What has taken so long? Well, there is at least one fairly simple, easy to understand explanation for that. And let's just be factual. Let's be fair here. The previous administration was an absolute joke and a nightmare. It was a scary joke all at the same time. And we're getting that played out for us now as they go through the financials. The previous administration in the city of McComb was ridiculous. You know that. Well, we talked about it at length. You know that. But I don't know that anyone realized it was going to be quite this bad. That 4 years later, because again, when she's talking about closing out 21, she's talking about the budget year that started in October of 2020. This is November of 2024. So included in that budget year is a month and a half worth of information that was 4 years ago. Over 4 years ago. We are still desperately trying to dig out from under the absolute disaster that the last administration left behind. And I know better, but I would like to think that that crew is a little bit ashamed of themselves at this point. You would hope. You and I know better than that.
He is here tonight, the auditor for 21. So if you have any questions in regards to the items that we're pulling, or any questions in regards to the financial statements.
Thank you, Dr. Frank. I'm going to get Ms. Campbell, you come up, Ms. Booker.
All right, now we're going to bring the auditor up, and it is time for our first break. So we're going to do that, and then when we come back, we'll hear from the auditor and get into a few pertinent questions, if you will, as we continue talking about last night's work session of the Macomb City Board of Mayor and Selectmen on SuperTalk, Mississippi, Pike County, 93.5. Keep it here.
Don't miss Dave in the morning, even when you miss it the first time. You can catch it on the podcast. Missing out would be a crime. SuperTalk 93.5 is always the place to be. Wanna get the podcast version? Here, my friend, is the key. SuperTalkPikeCounty.com. It's all there and it's all the rage. Spotify, Amazon, or Apple, or just right there on the page. Dave in the morning, late at night, or anytime you have the brave. SuperTalkPikeCounty.com. It's all there and it's all the rage. Spotify, Amazon, or Apple, or just right there on the page.
Hey, Kristen with Selman's Trivia of the Week. Last week's question was, what is the average lifespan of the prongs on your jewelry? The answer? 10 years. Make sure to bring your jewelry in for us to check and make sure your gems are secure. This week's question is, what color gem is a product of heat treating amethyst? This trivia is brought to you by Selman's, your family-owned jewelry store since 1945. 1311 Delaware Avenue, McComb.
Welcome back. Super Talk, Mississippi, Pike County, 93.5, and we go right back to last night's work session of the McComb City Board of Mayor and Selectmen, where the auditor working, now remember, we have multiple auditing firms. The later years, they can't do anything with those, though, until we get these done. We still have a stopping point. We have a blockade in the road of getting all the audits done 4 years ago. Well, the person working on that year's audits, that specific auditor for the 2020-2021 budget year, was at the meeting last night to talk to the selectmen.
Good evening, select men and select women. It's just a joy to be here. We're in the process of conducting the F121 audit, and it's about 50% complete. We did give.
Whoa! The 2020-2021 audit is half done. Half. According to the auditor doing the audit, it's only half done. We are years behind on these things. I'm going to play that again, just to make sure I didn't mishear that last night and again just then, because it's a little hard to believe that after years of working on this, it's now halfway done.
It's just a joy to be here. We're in the process of conducting the F121 audit, and it's about 50% complete.
No, he said 50%.
We did give a list to her to complete that list, and we're looking at a projected date. I know the board wants a projected date. We're looking at January 31st, no later than February 15th. You know, the audit report, you got stakeholders that look at the audit report, bondholders, and also the state of Mississippi. They're going to look at that.
Yes, that's why we need it. Not eventually, now. Because again, that budget year goes from October 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2021. So you're telling us it's going to be probably the middle of February, sometime in early February, we'll say, because he said January 31st and then February 15th. So we'll say the first half of February. It's going to be the first half of February 2025 before we can get the audit that includes what happened in October 2020. That's unacceptable. That is in no way acceptable. And anyone who now, having said that, again, we have to acknowledge what they're working with. If you give somebody a pile of bug-infested mud, got some other things mixed in there too, just a big heap of it in the front yard, and you tell them, I want you to build me a house, and it better be nice. It's going to take a minute, if it's even possible. So we do have to acknowledge what was left behind, the steaming pile of refuse that passed for the financial records kept by the last administration. And that problem, by the way, solely rests at the feet of the board members of the previous administration. 100%. How many city clerks did we have during that 4-year period? Wasn't it 5? Was it 5 or 6? That was one of the revolving doors. So we have to acknowledge that. But at the same time, if things were so messed up that it is taking 5 years to sort through 1 year's worth of financials, why has no one mentioned possible prosecutions at this point? If it's that bad, that passes beyond, oopsie, we made an error. If it takes 5 years to clear up 1 year's worth of financials, what in the heck's going on? Somebody somewhere needs to be called on the carpet for it.
21 is old. We want to get to 22 so we can get to 23 with something current. Because old information is not good information. But I just want to thank the board for giving me the chance to do the audit.
Well, I appreciate the generic platitude there, but yes, we are aware that old information is not good information. That's why we want information that's newer than 5 years ago. That's the point. This board took over in 2022. The first meeting, very first meeting of this administration, the discussion was about getting things in order and getting caught up on the audits. 2.5 years later, we've caught up nothing, and we're 50% complete on the first year, which was 2 years before this board took over. For my money, which it is, it's your money, it's all taxpayer dollars, that's unacceptable. Well, Selectman McKenzie from Ward 1, they asked him if he had some questions. I could have answered that for you. But he did indeed have some questions.
I have a lot of questions.
Yes, sir.
So, we're 3 years behind on audits.
Right.
Correct? And which, you know the implications of that. We can't apply for grants for fire and police, and we're paying a higher interest rate on our loans and all that sort of thing.
So it is having a tangible negative effect on the city of McComb, and specifically the finances of the city of McComb. As Selectman McKenzie just said, and you heard the auditor agree with, so you know he wasn't just saying something, we can't apply for police grants. We can't apply for fire grants. We're getting a bad interest rate on any loans we have. We would be getting a much better interest rate if our audits were caught up. They're not. So this is not just some talking point to argue over. This is having a direct impact on the financial situation of the city of McComb. When you can't apply for grants and you're getting charged a higher interest rate by the banks, that is a problem. When it's fixable, apparently the word fixable has to be followed by the word eventually.
And to me, these audits are not happening fast enough. Okay? We hired Mr. Dupree to assist us in getting bank reconciliations done. So we keep asking these questions, so I'm going to ask her directly. Is 21 and 22 bank reconciliations done through 22?
They were done. There have been some changes.
Whoa! Hold on. So the bank reconciliations from 3 years ago, 4 years ago, well, they reconciled everything. They were done. They were finished. Reconciliation is balancing the checkbook. It's a little more complicated than that, but not much. Balancing the checkbook of the city of McComb. Had it done, but then had to go back because, well, they're not done anymore because we had to make some changes. Changes? Have you ever balanced your checkbook and then gone back 6 months or a year later and said, well, I got to go make some adjustments in the way I balance that checkbook? Once you have determined what you spent and what came in, and you've reconciled it to the point to where you know how much money you actually have, you're done. And again, full hat tip, it's a little more complicated than that. Do not like the fact that 4 years after some of this activity happened, it was reconciled, but then there were some changes we had to go back and change.
As you have had changes in staff, things changed on your books, so I have to go back and adjust them.
As we had changes in staff, they had to go back and change things in the books. Does anybody else have one eyebrow way up on their forehead right now? As we had changes in staff, going back through this and trying to do, at this point, what is basically forensic accounting. It's been more than long enough to qualify as that. As you're going through doing forensic accounting on this, you get it fixed, you get it straight, and then you have to go back and adjust what you fixed because, well, you had a revolving door, so things, every time the person in the office changed, there are things we have to adjust. What in the double-dipped, chocolate-covered heck is going on here? When I heard that last night, I just sat there with my mouth open, like, really? It's that big of a mess? Everybody had their own way of doing new math? I don't understand that.
I'm hoping that there's not much adjustment to be done, but as I look at them, I see that there have been some changes. I didn't know that it changed, but maybe an entry was done, and I know that in 20, there could have been an entry done that needs to move forward. So I'm hoping that there's just a few adjustments to be made to 21, 22, but it was reconciled at a point. But as you change controllers and clerks, they did make some adjustments.
So those.
Okay. What kind of adjustments? I think the taxpayers of McComb deserve to get a list of those adjustments specifically where clerks and comptrollers, as she said, and everybody else did things that were now several years later going back and changing the way they did it and the way they entered it. She mentioned one thing in particular that they registered in one year that it should be moved forward to the succeeding year. When you have a situation with so much uncertainty around it, as we have with the financials for the city of McComb, and that uncertainty is not new. We've been dealing with this for years now. That is not reassuring to hear that you're going back, you're reconciling the books, and then a little while later, you're having to turn around and go back and re-reconcile the books after you change some stuff. It may be an innocent part of the procedure. It doesn't matter at this point. The optics are absolutely abysmal for that kind of activity.
So those aren't finished for 22?
No.
And the trial balances aren't finished either for 22?
Yes. The trial balances, and we've run the trial balances. I just run them out of your system. I don't do your accounting, so I run your trial balance from just out of your system, what your employees have done. So I do have a trial balance for 22, and I have a trial balance for 21.
So you got to go back and do some other work with the bank reconciliations for 21 and 22.
Right. I have to go back and make sure those numbers are.
And then based on your invoices, you have been working the last few months on 2021 audit stuff. Is that right?
I have. And I did work on 2022 financial statements as well, trying to make sure that they were available and they were going with the trial balance. But yeah, I wanted to make sure that 21 gets closed so we can move forward, because we can't move forward if we don't close that year out.
And I agree with that 100%. You can't balance your checkbook for 2021 until you know what your checkbook looked like at the end of 2020. so to speak. That actually makes 100% perfect sense. Yes, you got to take them in order. They're like dominoes. You can't go knock out the one in the middle and then go back and try to start the chain going. You're going to have a mess. But you already got a mess, apparently.
I would like to get your advice and opinion on how we can get caught up in 2025. Next year, get caught up with all financial information and get the audits caught up to where it's supposed to be with at least 1 year behind.
Yeah. In order to get 25.
No. In 25, get
25. Okay.
21, 22, get 22, 23, and get all the bank reconciled through 24, which...
Oh, in 25.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, well, that could be possible.
That could be possible, she says. Been hearing that for 2.5 years.
I'll say this because I have to, I don't do your accounting and I'm not here every day, so I have to rely a lot on your staff people too to help me pull stuff in and send stuff with me and to do things as well. And so if I have that connection and that working with them, then we can get that done because we're trying to wrap up 21 and 22 together.
All right, let me break it down a little simpler then. How can we just get our bank accounts reconciled?
Oh, we just want
for 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24. Just get all the bank accounts at September 30th of the year-end balance, a in-fund balance of all the accounts. Let's do it simple, because right now we're 3 years behind on that.
And if you're behind on your audit, you can continue to be behind on your reconciliation because that balance has to go forward. So when you have to take that audited balance, that audited cash balance, and move it forward to have a correct balance at the end. So as long as your audits are not finalized and they can be changed or they're correct, then your cash balances can be changed. So you're going to have that beginning balance going forward. So and that applies to cash and any other account that you have.
I'm fully aware of that.
Okay,
I'm talking about just balancing the checking accounts.
Yeah, it's the same thing. You want to balance the checking account to your books, right?
It's as close as you can before you go through all the other steps.
Yeah, that's what you have to do. You have to balance the cash accounts to your books. So your books have to be up to date as well as your cash account. You can, and we have done this. We cleared all the checks out, cleared all the deposits out, and leave the deposits that are outstanding and the checks that are outstanding. But again, you don't have the beginning balance to add those two, so you won't have the correct ending balance. So your books are going to have the correct beginning balance. So
yes, and she's correct. But at the same time, here is my question. The whole mandate, when this board came in, they talked about it in that very first meeting, and everybody around the table was in agreement on this. One of their most important jobs in this administration was to get the audits caught up. That was their big one. We have, if you are charitable with your estimations, they have completed one audit per year. That ain't catching nothing up. This administration, by the way, is over halfway done. And they're still 3 to 4 years behind on audits. Selema McKenzie's question was, how can we speed this up? Because we're not catching up anything. Oh, we got grand promises back at the beginning. Oh, yeah, we can do at least 2 a year. Well, that'd be great. When does that start? We're 2.5 years into a 4-year term, and it hasn't happened yet. It's not even close. We were told by the out-of-town auditor that they're about halfway done with the audit from 4 years ago. 3 years ago, technically, but far too long ago. We're not gaining ground. Selema Cotting had an interesting question as well.
What are the barriers you're running into that we need to know about or we can support you on?
In your offices, you have staff and you really need an accounting person. Dr. Booker and I were talking earlier about trying to clear the checks out, and as well as we were talking to your controller about clearing the checks out for payroll. when you, like, you know, in the bank statement, you have like checks listed for each person that cash your check, and they have a check number, so you will be able to clear that in your books.
Right.
But in your bank, you have all these check numbers, but on the books, all you have is one direct deposit with a total lump sum.
One lump sum.
So
a summation entry.
It's just really difficult to clear which ones cleared and which one didn't. So it's not going to be just like a regular. That's probably why you can't get a basic accountant to do it, because it's not going to be like a regular understanding. They're going to have to understand that when they see that journal entry is made, that is just one net pay for the entire payroll.
So in the accounting system, this is what I'm getting for what she just said. In the accounting system in McComb, when they run payroll, it shows up in the books as just one giant amount. Everybody's paycheck added together, and they put that number in and go, we paid out this much. They don't know how much to who. They don't know where it went. They just know they spent it. If you go right now, crack a window open, possibly open the door slightly and stick your head outside off in the distance, you can hear the heads of many accountants popping like popcorn as they listen to this. You're not keeping books, you're keeping educated guesses. If that's the way you're doing things.
And when you go and try to clear it out with the bank statements, you're not going to be able to do it. You're just going to have to try to add them up and try to do an alternate way. So things like that, as far as accounting goes, even with your loan payments and those type of things, it's like a payment is done for the loan, but it's not separated between interest and principal. So I have to go back and do that according to the amortization schedule. So it's more of a higher level of understanding that needs to happen when you're doing the accounting. So I run into things that I have to go back and do like that. And like if I say I'm going to be through with this by this date, knowing that normally I would be through, but then when I run into that, then it's going to take longer to get where I need to be.
In other words, it's taking me so long because I keep having to go back and do simple, basic accounting procedures on previous years during the previous administration to get things to a normal baseline that can be worked with. This is why I said earlier in the show, and I will keep repeating it, the previous administration, the management of the city underneath the city board and the decisions they made, well, we'll go with suboptimal. There's a lot of other words I could say about it. Some of them would get me kicked off the air. A couple of them would probably get me thrown in prison. Because I'm sorry, there is no excuse for this. None. But when you have people sitting around that board table that keep all 10 fingers into stuff they shouldn't be dealing with on a daily basis up to the second knuckle, you wind up with problems like this. Notice how every single mistake, every single problem, every single challenge that Dr. Dupre is talking about is something that would make it easier to hide if, stack of 20s fell off the edge of the desk. I didn't see it. Did you see it? I don't know. I just roll it in with that payroll amount. I'm not saying that happened. I'm just saying it provides the opportunity for a lot of suspicion, which is what you should be trying to avoid if you're in an elected position, instead of actively seeking it out like you're a member of the Penguins crew and Batman. Just it's not really surprising. It continues to be an endless source, a bottomless fountain of depression, though, doesn't it?
So your stance is currently we don't have a person with enough basic accounting background to be able to do this currently. And that needs to be high up when we hire someone new.
got any more closing remarks? Or?
And it's, I don't want to sound cliche by saying you're not the only city, but you're not, that it's hard to get accounting people to come in that are at that level. We're going to say, have a job, more money, and they're not coming. So I know that you do sometimes have to go the road where you have to pay more money and hire a CPA firm to come in and get you straight and get you going and try to train somebody. So I do understand that, but again, if you could, that would be your way to go. You could hire somebody and maybe just hire an accountant and just put them there and let them just focus on that, and that's it. Because your staff have to do lots of other things too.
Are we able to hire a accountant firm?
Well, I'm actually waiting on 2 callbacks based on Selectman Collins' suggestion. I did call those two firms. I'm waiting on both of them to get back with me, Horn and
HRK?
Yes, HRK. So Selectman maybe obviously the board did not budget for that. I don't know what that looks like in terms of numbers. But Dr. Grace is there, and of course it won't be.
Of course, you wouldn't know what it would look like in terms of numbers to bring in an outside accounting firm to help get the books straight after everybody messed them up so badly in the last administration, because the last administration messed the books up so badly, nobody really knows what we got. We keep getting reassurances, but if it was in this bad of shape, that was just pie in the sky thinking to say, oh, well, we know, well, we're fine. Everything's fine. It's gonna be okay. It's no problem. You had no way to know that. And we're getting the proof of that right now. This was discussion last night at the work session. We still don't know how we ended up. And we're having to go back and change things after everything had already been reconciled. We didn't get any details on that. I really want details on that. I really want to hear specifically about the things that looked fine on the first reconciliation pass, and then later it was realized, oh wait, no, we got to fix that. We got to change that. That was the word that was used, change. The frustration's not over with this process, including one very simple thing. I say simple, it's not quite that simple, but something that could be addressed to make all of this better and make all of this easier. City administrator talked about it, and we'll hear what he had to say when we come back on Super Talk Mississippi, Pike County.
Hey, Kristen with Selman's Trivia of the Week. Last week's question was, what is the average lifespan of the prongs on your jewelry? The answer, 10 years. Make sure to bring your jewelry in for us to check and make sure your gems are secure. This week's question is, what color gem is a product of heat treating amethyst? This trivia is brought to you by Selman's, your family-owned jewelry store since 1945, 1311 Delaware Avenue, McComb.
Don't miss Dave in the morning. Even when you miss it the first time, you can catch it on the podcast. Missing out would be a crime. Super Talk 93.5 is always the place to be. Want to get the podcast version? Here, my friend, is the key. SuperTalkPikeCounty.com. It's all around, it's all the rage. Spot
weekday mornings at 6 after 9 on 93.5 FM, or you can catch up anytime by going to
SuperTalkPikeCounty.com.
Dave in the Morning at SuperTalkPikeCounty.com. Catch up and catch on. Welcome back on a Wednesday morning. Super Talk, Mississippi, Pike County, 93.5. All right, last night, in the middle of all of this discussion, it was mentioned that, I'll let City Administrator David Myers say it himself regarding the system in use by the city of McComb.
One thing about the city of McComb, every board member knows this, we have this unique software system that we use, and everybody's not using that.
Most definitely. That's another thing.
That's Dr. Dupre saying most definitely that's another thing. Unique is such a positive way to try to spin the fact that your accounting software stinks. Outdated, not useful. Nobody else is using it for a reason. But we're going to spin that and say we have a very unique system. No, your system stinks. That has become painfully obvious, if no other time, through this conversation.
Most definitely a unique software, as Mr. Miles put it.
And it's good for us, and Dr. Dupre actually is very familiar with that unique software system that we have. So, if this board suggestion, and of course, obviously, for her to spend more hours down here to get us closer to the finish line a lot faster, and obviously that goes along with what Mr. Booker's doing to get this audit finished. I don't think there's anybody around this table that don't want these audits, finished prior to this board term ending. I would ask that you guys get a little more aggressive, to help to get to the finish line and see what it looks like come December 31st, 2025. I think this board, if I'm hearing correctly, they want you to be more aggressive, and if you need more hours, then so be it.
Listen, I think when you put it on the book, when you can go ahead and vote on it,
Well, they're on the contract already.
And y'all need a good contract.
They're on the contract already. Just need to spend more hours doing what.
I'm of the opinion you need some set dates of when we're going to finish something. Not open-ended by the hour.
That's right.
I would like to see that. I want to see something specific.
But we have seen something specific. We saw, 19, they completed 19, right? They completed 20, right? So we are making progress. We seeing something,
You're completing audits at the rate of 1 per year. That's normal. If you haven't let it slip by 4 years, you have to do more than that to catch up. How is this? Sometimes we want to argue just to prove how smart we are, and all we wind up doing is proving that we're not. If you start your administration 4 years behind on audits, and 2 years later you've done 2 audits, well, you have not caught up anything. You have not made any progress. That is not progress. That is not something to brag about. That is not something to puff your chest out and go, well, we're doing a real good job. It's that lack of comprehension about the situation that got us in this mess. So, for my money, personally, I would say just be quiet. Just my thought.
She come her hours.
You're still 3 years behind.
But we came in 3 years behind, so we are still working. It's a work in progress.
So we haven't moved anywhere towards.
Okay, yes, we have moved. I'm not gonna sit there and let you say we haven't moved. We have moved.
So if I'm correct, Mr. Booker and Dr. Of course, now we talked about this. I think Select McKinsey had asked me to ask Mr. Booker this. you guys being, CPA in terms of what you charge. I mean, there's no.
Yeah, it doesn't matter at this point. We still have people sitting around that table that think that doing one audit a year is going to catch us up, and that's progress in the goal of catching up 4 years worth of audits that we were behind, or 3 years, or however many years it was. It almost doesn't matter at this point because we're still that amount behind over 2 years later. That is not progress in the goal of catching up the audits to be current. It's not. There's no, we completed 2 audits. How long did that take? 2 years? So you're doing an audit a year. With all this extra help coming in and all this extra money being spent, we're managing to tread water and do it at the rate we would normally do it if things were normal. That's not progress. So no, I'm going to fight back on that one. No. That's not progress towards the goal. Is it progress towards, we're plugging along? Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and let you say, yes, I know you're not constitutionally able to sit there and not weigh in with what I consider to be a ridiculous opinion. You started out 3 years worth of audits behind. 2 years later, you're still 3 years worth of audits behind. And you want to quibble over words. We've made progress. Not an IQ.
If you cried out for more, if you reached out for me, I would run to the sun.
You start the race in last place and you complete 5 laps. The fact that you ran around the track 5 times isn't progress if you're still in last place. Final break. Let's close it down so I can go take some nerve treatments after this. Keep it here.
Hey, Kristen with Selman's Trivia of the Week. Last week's question was, what is the average lifespan of the prongs on your jewelry? The answer, 10 years. Make sure to bring your jewelry in for us to check and make sure your gems are secure. This week's question is, what color gem is a product of heat treating amethyst? This trivia is brought to you by Selman's, your family-owned jewelry store since 1945, 1311 Delaware Avenue, McComb.
It's Dave in the morning. Even when you miss it the first time, you can catch it on the podcast. Missing out would be a crime. SuperTalk 93.5 is always the place to be. Wanna get the podcast version? Here, my friend, is the key. SuperTalkPikeCounty.com. It's all there and it's all the rage. Spotify, Amazon, or Apple, or just right there on the page. Dave in the morning, late at night, or anytime you have the crave. SuperTalkPikeCounty.com.
Dave Hughes here. Remember, every weekday morning at 9:06, it's Dave in the Morning, where we solve the problems of the world, or at least complain about them really loudly and sarcastically. And if you miss out, you can catch up with the podcast version of Dave in the Morning at SuperTalkPikeCounty.com. Once again, we have run out the clock on our hour together for this Wednesday. We get to do it again tomorrow morning, though, at 9:06 for another North Pike Thursday. As we start gearing up, is it too early to take a long Thanksgiving weekend? If Thanksgiving isn't until next week, I'm saying go for it. Knock yourself out. 9:06 tomorrow morning here on Super Talk, Mississippi, Pike County, my friend. I'll see you then.
A Super Talk Mississippi media production.